one of my favorite things from it, and I have no idea if this was an intentional joke or not, but it's funny regardless, is the point where the doctor asks, "Will it hurt?" when he's about to drink the potion. Get it?
Yes, I do get it.
Hurt?
Yes,
Will it hurt?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, doctor, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt you.
Yes, thank you. I get it.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is the Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Listen to the light at the end?
I did.
I just got my my physical copy today.
So
it takes some time for them to ship that over from the UK.
Right. Yeah. That would be true, wouldn't it? Yeah. So it's a good thing we have the miracle of internet, that you are able to listen to these things digitally.
and Big Finish is very nice in that once you purchase the physical thing, they give you the digital thing as well, provided that they are able to do so.
Yeah, that is very nice of them.
There are a number of products on the Big Finish site that are physical only, but presuming that physical and digital exist, if you buy physical, they'll just give it to you to download as many times as you want and keep it in your account forever and all that good stuff.
That is all good stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, the physical object is pretty nice.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, I got the limited edition, and it looks like a hardcover book.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, it's a hardcover book that goes inside of a slipcase. And the slipcase and the book have exactly the same design. They have the same front cover, same back cover, same spine. So I'm not entirely sure why there's an additional case to go over the cover that looks exactly like the cover, but perhaps it helps secure the discs inside. Maybe that's the thought. And then if you open it up, it's got like pages that you turn that contain the discs, and then like a dozen or more pages of like art. And by art I mean like the characters in the story photoshopped together against backgrounds, and rather like you see on Big Finish cover art from time to time.
Yeah. As
well as it's got a little I haven't read it in full yet, but it's got a write up for the Celestial Intervention Agency by Straxus on the 23rd November 1963 incident, interim report to the High Council of the Time Lords. And it's just got a very long. It's pretty long. It's
wow.
I assume it just summarizes the events of the story and explains, who all the characters are and stuff like that, because it's broken down into sections. So it won't tell me anything I don't already know from having listened to the story twice. but it is pretty cool.
That does sound cool. I'm a little sad that I only got the digital download, because I that sounds like a thing that would be pretty neat to own.
It is pretty neat, and I do own it. And I'm probably just going to stick it on a shelf and just look at it from time to time and say, this is a limited edition thing that I own. They only made 10,000 copies, and I got copy 1,738. So that's something I can feel good about.
That's something you can lord over all the other Doctor Who fans who were not among the 10,000.
Or those among the 10,000 who got one that's numbered higher than mine.
Is that how it works? Is the lower the number, the more precious it is?
I don't know.
I mean, I do imagine that like having number 1 would be pretty neat.
Or number 1,000.
True.
Or 10,000. Or 1963.
Oh yeah,
that would probably be pretty neat.
Yeah.
This was your first ever audio experience of most of the Doctors and Companions in this.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you have heard some Eighth Doctor audios with Lucy Miller, but other than that, I don't think you ever heard any Big Finish audio plays.
I don't think I have, unless I am just forgetting them. And on top of that, it's also the first time that I've heard anything with Charlie in it, and it's also the first time I have heard or seen anything with Leela in it.
That's interesting, because I think my first impression of Leela was probably also through a Big Finish audio.
Ah.
I think. Yeah, that is true. I heard a Big Finish audio that featured her before I ever saw a TV episode with her.
Ah.
As for Charlie is Big Finish audio only. So
right.
There's no TV episode that you could have seen instead.
Right.
So what did you think about the light at the end?
I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty great.
It was really, really great to just hear all of the doctors just interacting with each other and talking to each other, and just, I don't know. And it's also just a lot of fun to hear some of these doctors who, I mean, personally, I have not, I know that they're doing stuff in audio things that I haven't actually listened to, but I don't know, it's kind of neat to hear all these doctors just back in action. And I don't know, I like to imagine in my head that they had a lot of fun doing this,
and I suspect they did.
But so it's just, I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the Master was pretty great. I really liked Jeffrey Beavers.
Yeah, he's a good audio master in my opinion.
Yeah,
because he has a very good menacing voice.
Yeah, that was a very, very good Master voice, I thought. But I just like the whole thing. I mean, the whole concept of the Master trying to get the Doctor, that's not terribly original, but some of the stuff surrounding it was pretty original. I mean, and pretty cool. The idea of a pocket dimension where there's these really dangerous weapon dealer guys, and I like the Celestial Intervention Agency.
Yes.
Who
are briefly mentioned in the TV series, and I want to say they're mentioned in The Deadly Assassin, but very little detail is ever given. So Big Finish likes to use them every so often, though.
Yeah. I liked the concept of them being undercover and
the CIA.
Yeah, exactly. And I also liked the idea of them being seemingly mostly incompetent.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of neat and funny. Not necessarily neat, but definitely funny.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I like the whole concept of it. I like how they didn't try to make the story ridiculously complicated.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple, and you spend a good deal of time with each Doctor. And then I really liked the end of it.
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of funny because it's a release celebrating 50 years of Doctor Who, and it ends with someone who's really grumpy yelling at the Doctor because he's very annoyed with him.
Yeah.
It's kind of a strange way to end a celebratory release, but I thought it was funny, so I liked it.
Yeah. It's kind of, I was kind of expecting it to end on kind of this big, emotional moment where it was yeah, we're really great, aren't we? Yeah, we are. And then, I don't know, then they all go off and do their own thing or whatever. But no, it ended with the Doctor getting yelled at 8 times, basically. Well, I don't know if the earlier Doctors got yelled at as much. I'm assuming they got progressively, or the guy got progressively angrier
each time.
Yeah.
One assumes. Well, he might have gone in stages. The first 4, he got increasingly angry, and then he reached a stage of acceptance, and then he got angry again because he came out kind of on the other side of that.
That could be. I could see that. I also liked how the first 3 Doctors were kind of in it.
Kind of.
Because I feel like, if they had just gone with the living actors, which, I mean, obviously that's what you'd expect them to do. I don't know. I feel like it would just be... I mean, I'm sure they could explain it away, but I'm glad they didn't.
Big Finish hasn't often in the past used sound-alikes.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, the sound-alikes they used didn't really sound exactly alike.
No. No, I could mostly just tell when it was the first Doctor speaking because he ended his sentences with things like, my boy, and Exactly.
And did you know who those actors were?
No, I didn't.
The first Doctor is Ian.
Oh.
The first Doctor is William Russell, who does Ian. And the second Doctor is Fraser Hines, who does, Jamie.
Right. Huh.
So, kind of the background on that is that Big Finish has this series of audios called the Companion Chronicles.
Oh, yeah?
Which, rather than being, full cast audio dramas, are just like one person reading an audio book. Like explaining what goes on, like the Doctor said this, and then I blah 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 blah, and then I saw the TARDIS and I opened the door and there was the Doctor, so the actors end up having to do kind of impressions of the Doctor.
Oh.
So they've pretty well honed that over time.
That's really interesting.
So yeah, William Russell has his idea of how he performs the first Doctor, and Fraser Hines has his idea of how he performs the second Doctor, and so they figured, let's work those in. And then the guy who played the third Doctor was, I forget his name. It's like Tim Trelawar, I think, and he's just some guy.
Oh,
some guy, some actor they've worked with before who does a pretty good third Doctor impersonation.
Yeah, well, there you go. But yeah. At very first, I wasn't even sure. I wasn't sure what I was hearing, and then I realized that it was the first three Doctors, and then I think it was Colin Baker specifically says, "Oh, it's the first three Doctors. Look, there they are," or whatever. I forget what it was exactly, but yeah. So but yeah, no. I think the impressions were close enough that I sort of knew what was going on, and I just liked it. I liked having them.
Yeah, I do think it adds to the story and giving them real stuff to do, even though they're not directly involved. Really,
yeah,
they play a role.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, Tegan and Turlough get thrown in there at random as well.
Yeah. I noticed that. I until you mentioned it, I completely forgot. I don't remember what the point of them was.
Well, I think the point of them was just to illustrate the fact that when Charlie first, gets kind of lost in time or whatever, and she's seeing all the different points in the TARDIS's history.
Oh, right.
One of the ones she just happens to see is a point where Turlough is sneaking around the TARDIS, presumably still working for the Black Guardian, and fretting about whether he's going to kill the Doctor or not. And then she kind of barges in on that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit confusing at first.
Doesn't serve all that much of a purpose.
No, not really. But, still a lot of fun. I definitely like this in contrast to what I'm sure the Day of the Doctor is going to be, which is going to be a lot of serious, dramatic stuff happening. And then this is more, there's a lot at stake in this, but it's never really too serious. It's generally pretty lighthearted.
Yeah, and I think I do like what I assume the Day of the Doctor is going to be like.
Right.
Yeah, obviously I don't know what the Day of the Doctor is going to be like, but I assume that it's going to be something I like. But I'm sure that they're going to be very different from one another.
Right. Yeah, I would. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the Day of the Doctor will turn out to be a lighthearted romp. I'm not holding my breath, but you never know.
Yeah, and actually, Big Finish they do a good job whenever they do tackle the kind of story that's like a big, heavy, emotional, character-driven story. But they also handle this very well. So
yeah.
I'm glad that this is the direction they did choose to go in.
Yeah, because I don't know if that was intentional. If they had some inkling of what and once again, I don't have any inkling what the Day of the Doctor is going to be about, but I'm assuming it's going to be serious. And I don't know. I like to think that they sort of thought, you know what? Let's give them something not, I don't know. But
I think one of the reasons Big Finish, I'm sure one of the reasons Big Finish kind of went with this kind of story is I think they coordinated a little bit with the production office.
Oh, okay.
Well, they always have to run everything they do by the BBC.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if there was a planned effort, but I think Steven Moffat and Nicholas Briggs, who runs the Doctor Who Rangers at Big Finish, they know each other because Nicholas Briggs voices the Daleks.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure they had chats and were well aware that they're doing two very different kinds of stories and they're not stepping on each other's toes, because the the BBC does sometimes say no to them based on what's going on in the TV show.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, for a while, Big Finish wasn't allowed to do anything with Davros. Because, the TV show was going to do their own Davros thing. And they kind of wanted them to step off for a while. But then, after a while, they said, all right, you can use Davros again, I guess.
Huh, that's pretty neat. Well, yeah, because I was wondering, because, I hate to bring up canon. But I don't know. I like to. I like to imagine that this stuff is all canon. That this really quote unquote happened. As much as a story like this can happen. And so I like the thought that it's. I don't know, because it doesn't. I don't know. I just like it to feel real, and it certainly felt real, and I wanted it to continue feeling. But so the point is, I'm glad that there's some amount of coordination.
Yeah. One actually, I think it's a pretty cool thing that happened is there's a release that's coming up. In fact, I think it's being released this month. It's one of those companion chronicle releases I just mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Called The Beginning. And it features Carol Ann Ford as Susan telling the story of what happened right after they fled Gallifrey.
Ooh.
And the cover was released with a TARDIS design that didn't match the TARDIS design that was shown in The Name of the Doctor, because this cover design was released before The Name of the Doctor aired. But then shortly after The Name of the Doctor aired, they unveiled a new cover design that's like, all right, now we match. So there's an attempt to maintain consistency, even though they're usually not allowed to directly refer to things involving the new series.
Right. Yeah, well that's cool. I like that.
Like, they're not allowed to mention the Time War.
Oh, okay.
Although there is a somewhat jokey mention of it in a somewhat recent release where someone's like, a big war between the Time Lords and the Daleks, like, that'll ever happen.
Oh, it's so ironic.
Yep.
But yeah. I was actually kind of wondering, because I was kind of wondering why this story only. I know that it kind of has to, but I was wondering why this story only involved the first 8 Doctors and why it didn't involve any Doctors after that. And I'm assuming, or rather, a headcanon explanation is that it has something to do with the Time War, and I'm completely fine with just doing that. But it was something I thought about.
Yeah. It's a little strange because it's like, all right, so this is a version of the Master from before the 5th Doctor, who decides to go after all of the Doctors up through the 8th Doctor, but no further.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It could have something to do with the Time War or shorting out the time differential, or something suitably nonsensical.
Yeah. Maybe it's like he could go, like, maybe the Master could only go 4 Doctors forward and 4 Doctors back, and so he was like, you know what? All right, that's how it's gonna work.
Or maybe the other Doctors were involved in some capacity that was sort of, they just couldn't they just weren't noticed by the other Doctors.
Oh yeah,
like they contributed in some incredibly valuable way that the other Doctors don't even realize, and then they also turn up at Bob Dovey's house on that day to see what's up, but we don't see it because we're from the 8th Doctor's perspective. Right.
Yeah, there you go. That's got to be it.
For me, one of the great things about this story is the 8th Doctor and the 4th Doctor together.
Yeah,
because the 4th Doctor is, well, the 8th Doctor is kind of like Big Finish's Doctor, in that there is no TV series. They just had they had free reign to do whatever they wanted with him. Of course, so did the comics and so did the novels. So he's also, in a sense, he's the comics Doctor and he's the novels Doctor. But when he's on Big Finish, he's their Doctor. He's everything they did with them. And then Tom Baker is the Doctor that they thought they'd never get.
Yeah.
Because for years and years, he just wouldn't have anything to do with Big Finish. He only just started doing Big Finish plays about 2 years ago.
Huh.
Whereas all the other ones have been doing them for over 10 years.
Oh, wow. Was there any reason that he just refused, or he just didn't feel like it?
Well, I think the sense I get, and I don't want to speak for him, is that he didn't like being defined by Doctor Who, but has sort of become more comfortable with it over time. Possibly because Doctor Who is cooler now than it used to be, like more like in the public eye and stuff. But
right, yeah.
But there's also I think he didn't understand that this is a legitimate operation and not just a bunch of fans that were bothering him and asking him like to be in their fan produced thing.
That's kind of great.
But the way he eventually kind of came into it was, you know, he knows other people who are involved in Doctor Who, and eventually like he heard them talking about, oh, I do all this stuff with Big Finish and they're so great and they're such a pleasure to work with, and you know, they're a big fan of yours, and the lunches are fantastic. Because everyone's always talking about how Big Finish lunches are fantastic whenever you hear like an interview about Big Finish.
Okay.
but yeah, so yeah, eventually he just decided he'd give it a go, and now he's back and he's working with them. And apparently he was the one who really wanted to have a multi-Doctor story done by Big Finish.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, Nicholas Briggs didn't want to do it.
Okay, wait, why did Nicholas Briggs not want to do it?
There's a perception that like the multi-Doctor stories are never as good as you want them to be.
I guess that's fair.
They actually did a multi-Doctor story for the 40th anniversary that a lot of fans don't like at all.
Okay,
it's a very different kind of story for this one. It's got like it's a very continuity heavy 8th Doctor story that's like the culmination of the 8th Doctor and Charlie arc that features like flashback dream sequences of the other Doctor and lots of surrealism and symbolism and strange literary allusions, and it's very, I love it, but a lot of people hate it.
Okay.
Whereas this is a pretty simple and straightforward story where like something's happening to all the Doctors.
Right.
But yeah, anyhow, I think he was the analogy he used in an interview I heard was he's very bah humbug about it. But then as Christmas comes closer, your heart starts to melt and you realize that the Christmas spirit is with us all or something. Isn't that's Christmas, right?
I think so.
That's the religious meaning of it's about a Christmas spirit who is with us all, right? That's
that's what happened.
Okay, good. It's been a while since I've read the Bible.
Yeah. It's the there's something about real Christmas trees too. Like it needs to be a real tree.
Oh, and they kill, right? Christmas trees, they kill.
Yes, they kill.
That's in the Bible.
Yes.
But anyhow, yeah. So basically, Tom Baker was the like, but Mr. Briggs, it's Christmas. By analogy, it's not really Christmas.
Right? No. It's Doctor Who Christmas.
Yeah, presumably it was around Christmas when they would have been planning this because these things take a while to make.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it may well have been.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
What did you think of the music?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean,
there's this one musical cue that they used a couple times in the story that's a blatant rip-off of I Am the Doctor.
Oh, really? I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same melody, but it's got the same like dun 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 rhythm, and it's just got it's like not quite the same melody, but it's the same general idea, and I thought it was kind of funny that they worked that in there.
Yeah, I must have missed that. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I guess what I was thinking was that the music sounded like it was Doctor Who. I mean, it should, but I don't know, it did. And I don't know, maybe that was why on some subconscious level I processed that as being like Doctor Who.
Yeah, the version of the main theme they use was pretty strange. I thought.
Yeah, it was definitely very strange. I mean, it seemed like it was trying to incorporate a bunch of, it seemed like it was trying to incorporate like a mix of all the different themes from over the years. And I mean, it certainly was reminiscent of that. But I mean, that also comes out sounding like kind of a hodgepodge.
Yeah, hodgepodge would be a fair assessment, I think. It was fine though.
No,
didn't bother me.
No, it was not like it wasn't like deeply offensive or anything.
No. I just thought this is kind of interesting what they're going for.
I think that we may have even sort of discussed this, but I mean I think that the theme that they are using now for the show is a very good theme that sort of harkens back to some of the older versions of the theme, and I mean I like that because it's its own thing, but it still sort of feels sort of retro, but this doesn't really feel retro so much as it just feels like a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I'm not like upset by it or offended.
Yeah, because a bunch of different things is exactly what it is.
That's true. Isn't
that what Doctor Who is all about? A bunch of different things.
You are not wrong. I like that one part where the Fourth Doctor was commenting on the Eighth Doctor's TARDIS and he called it ostentatious. I don't know. There were lots of little bits. I don't know.
I like the part where the Fourth Doctor is commenting on his style of dress and correctly identifies it as a Wild Bill Hickok costume.
Right.
Which is, that's where the Doctor gets it. He steals someone's Wild Bill Hickok costume from a costume party.
That's right.
Whereas more often his costume is usually referred to as reminiscent of Lord Byron. That's what Ace says in this. Ace has Ace. This is not like a realistic or naturalistic piece of dialogue at all. But Ace just kind of goes down the list and insults each one's costume, and I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. There were lots of good bits of dialogue. The Sixth Doctor had some moments where he was just being excessively sassy. At one point I forget what the name of the Time Lord from the Celestial
Straxus.
Oh, Straxus, right. I don't know. Straxus tries talking over him, and he's like, "Shut up, I'm thinking." I just love that.
Straxus is a recurring character in Big Finish.
Oh, is he?
Yes, he's their default guy from the Celestial Intervention Agency.
Ah.
But they have him played by a different actor pretty much every time he shows up. Which they can afford to do.
Yeah. That's
because of regeneration.
Yeah, you can, as long as you don't go over 13 or explain it somehow.
Yep.
Something weird that I guess doesn't really need to be explained. And might have even just been either an accident or just an effort to sort of make things easier to understand. But at one point, it was the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa were talking, and they were talking about the Master, and they were talking about, I think they were talking about it was weird because I think they specifically say that it was the Master before the regeneration that they saw in Logopolis.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was
before we met him on Logopolis.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure they specifically say regeneration. Yeah.
The Doctor does use the word regeneration.
Yeah. So are we? So. Was that just? I guess it could be that the Doctor just didn't know that it wasn't a regeneration. Oh, well, you should have known that he was at the end of his life.
He knows. I think the Doctor knows exactly what went on there. I think he even mentions that the Master used the residual power that he had left over from the Keeper to absorb Nyssa's father's body.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's all brought out into the open, and I think the Doctor would know that. And I guess it might just be that, like, as a matter of, not feeling like he has to explain all of that, then there to Nyssa who already knows it. He just, as kind of a shorthand, he says regenerate because, he's a Time Lord. He's in a different body. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Which, actually, if I were Nyssa, I might be quite offended by that.
Right. That was
Excuse me? Before he what?
Right. Yeah, that's her daddy murdered. It's kind of downplaying it.
I probably would not have used the word regenerate in that circumstance had I been writing this story.
Right.
But then again, I also don't feel like it's necessary to summarize those events.
Right, yeah.
Here and now in the middle of this story.
Yeah, I think that would have been a little bit unwieldy.
Although presumably there will be people listening to this who haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Because I think this is probably going, I don't know this for sure, but this is probably going to be one of the more popular Big Finish releases.
Yeah.
In their time, and there will probably be some people checking this out who might not have seen every episode of the classic series.
Yeah.
Such as you.
You're right.
Or I was an avid Big Finish listener long before I saw every episode of the classic series. So it's possible that a listener might not even know.
Yeah. They'd just be waiting. They'd be watching Legopolis. No. Sorry. They'd be watching Keeper of Traken, and they'd be like, oh, I bet the Master's about to regenerate, and then he didn't, and then he doesn't regenerate, and then they'd be all confused.
And it preserves the surprise.
Oh, it's true. It does. So there you go.
How do you think this story is for someone who isn't all that familiar with the classic series? Now, I know you're pretty familiar with the classic series by this point.
Yeah.
But would you hand this to someone who isn't all that familiar with the classic series and say, here's a multi-doctor story that kind of introduces you to all the doctors? Because what one might do that with, say, the 5 Doctors,
right?
Do you think this works in that regard?
I don't know, because on the one hand, I mean, I do like the idea of having this one big story that sort of introduces you to all the doctors and gives you kind of a sense of who they all are and stuff. But I mean, on the other hand, I would almost say you should wait, because there are so many references in here to the classic series that you wouldn't even pick up on, and some of which I didn't pick up on. That I don't know. I feel like it's almost a more rewarding experience to not have this be your introduction to those doctors, or I don't know. Yeah,
it's probably not the best, first ever thing first ever Doctor Who media you consume other than New Who.
Well,
probably not the best.
No.
But I think I don't think it requires like an in-depth knowledge to understand the story.
No, certainly not. And I would say, I don't know what I would say. I would say that, yeah, I mean, I would say that it definitely, on the flip side, I would not go so far as to say that you need to have watched classic Doctor Who in order to listen to this. Like, I feel like if for some reason you love New Who and you have no intention of watching classic Who, for whatever reason, I do not think that you should not listen to this.
Well, this has much better special effects.
Well, that's true. It has the effects of the imagination, and also the sounds sound reasonably realistic, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like real sound. Yeah, it was very, very fun. I've already listened to it twice, and I might listen to it again.
Whoa!
I might listen to it again before Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, well, and that's it's probably a pretty good way to lead up to the Day of the Doctor. You can hear 1 through 8, and then you can hear, or not hear. Well, you will hear, but you can see 10 and 11.
So, what did you think about the Night of the Doctor?
I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I was completely freaking out.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah, I would, much the same for me. I was trying to freak out as internally as possible because I was actually watching it at work. But I figured, hey, it's only like 7 minutes. That's fine. But yeah, no, it was friggin' awesome. I can't even begin to express how much I loved it.
Were you spoiled in advance?
Well, I'd heard rumors that Paul McGann was in it, but I mean, I was no. But by the time when I actually sat down to watch it, I had not yet read anything on Twitter or any other place where spoilers can happen. So no, I was spoiler free.
I mean, there had been rumors that Paul McGann had recorded a minisode. But there have been Paul McGann-related rumors for as long as I've been a Doctor Who fan. There's always a background level. Whenever there's like a finale or like something big, I'm always wondering maybe there's going to be a Paul McGann cameo. That is a thought that is never far from my thoughts. So I actually woke up and I looked at Twitter when I woke up, and one of the first things I saw was a tweet that said, "You seriously need to watch The Night of the Doctor right now." And this was not directed at me; it was just like a general tweet. I forget who it was from, but they had announced that there was going to be a mini-sode, but it came a couple days earlier than they said it was going to. And I was like, okay, well, I'm glad I saw that before I saw any actual specific spoilers. So I'll just queue it up, and then, all right, I'll leave it to buffer. I'll get in the shower, and then, like 15 minutes later or so, I come back. I was like, oh yeah, I left this buffer in. And so I sat down and I had that baseline anticipation, like, maybe Paul McGann's going to be in it. And when I heard his voice, it didn't occur to me immediately to be shocked, because I've heard, every Big Finish audio that he's ever done. So I'm very used to hearing his voice saying things. So it took me a second to understand what had just happened.
So you thought maybe you had left a Big Finish audio open on your computer, and like maybe it had accidentally started playing when the YouTube had started playing.
Well, I don't think it was as specific as that. It was just like, oh, it's Paul McGann's voice, of course.
Of course. Why wouldn't Paul McGann's voice be in Doctor Who?
It's where it belongs.
That is where it belongs. It truly is. And yeah. I mean, I think it was similar, where I saw some tweet about The Night of the Doctor, and I knew immediately that I needed to watch it. But yeah, no, yeah, and right from Paul McGann's opening dialogue, I just loved it. It was just so rich with, I don't know, something irony maybe, where he's like, I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you were expecting.
Yep.
And that was just great. I loved that.
Yeah, there were a lot of great lines in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are we heading to the back of the ship? Because the front crashes first. Pay attention.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was really like jam packed with just it was perfect. I don't know, and it made me feel like I instantly, this was just it instantly felt right. I guess that, like, of course this is Paul McGann's Doctor. Of course he's doing stuff, and he's saving people from crashing ships and stuff. And it just, I don't know, it felt, I mean, it didn't feel, I don't know, it just didn't feel wrong. It felt like this is what should have been. And I feel like we're just getting like this small little taste of the Paul McGann Doctor, the Eighth Doctor.
And another thing about it that I absolutely loved was that it mentioned the name of his Big Finish companions.
Oh yeah.
He and that was another thing that momentarily he said Charlie, Lucy, and then I'm like, okay, yeah. Oh wait a second! Like, it didn't occur to me immediately how crazy that was.
Well, right, because I thought that was kind of a thing that the BBC didn't do. That they didn't refer to anything that required you to buy it or whatever.
Well, what they're not allowed to do is they're not allowed to make a story that you can't follow unless you have bought a commercial product.
Ah, okay.
That's their charter. That's part of their charter. So when it's like a one-off reference like this, I suppose it's allowed, but they still have shied away from doing it in the past. But in this case, that felt really good to me as a person who has heard all of those Big Finish audios, and in fact, like, I came to Doctor Who through the new series, and then after getting into the new series, I got into Big Finish. Back when there was only 2 seasons of the new series, and then after that, I started to explore the classic series. So Big Finish was like a major part of what Doctor Who is for me, and like those companions are like, they're as central to my experience of Doctor Who as like Rose and Martha and Donna are. So to have them, like, all of a sudden, to have the new series, I mean, a mini-sode of the new series, but still, the new series be saying like, yes, this is an important part of the story of Doctor Who, that this is what the Eighth Doctor has on his mind in the moment before he regenerates into this big Doctor that's central to the story we're telling right now.
Right.
It sort of connects everything in a way that it had never been connected before. And so that was probably my personal favorite part of the whole thing. Yeah,
that definitely was very, very cool to see that sort of, I don't know, validated, I guess, because, I really like what I've heard of the Big Finish stuff, but I mean, there is kind of this sort of, you kind of have to wonder, like, well, how much is this really even considered in the making of the new show? Like, I mean, it's a different Doctor than the one currently playing, and these are companions that have only ever appeared with the Eighth Doctor. How much relevance do they really have to the new series, and what we're seeing as part of the new series? And I mean, so it's nice to see that this is all sort of been brought into the fold, I guess, or whatever. But I thought that was really neat. Although I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Something about that line kind of seemed almost forced. I mean, in a sense, it kind of was, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, because in all fairness, they had 7 minutes. I mean, they've got to shove, tons of lines in there that just sort of, if you had like a full episode to do that, maybe you could have had some sort of, I don't know what you could have done, but that could have been presented differently. And I mean, I understand.
Well, one of the things about that is, though, that like that's kind of in character for the Eighth Doctor in Big Finish. Like, he will sometimes go down memory lane and like just randomly, for no apparent reason, reminisce about something that happened before, like including like listing all of the people he's known.
He just keeps like a running list.
Like, yeah, in the very first Paul McGann audio that he ever did for Big Finish, which was called Storm Warning. As the audio begins, he doesn't have a companion. He's in the TARDIS talking to himself for minutes on end, and then he pulls a copy of Frankenstein off the shelf and starts, rambling about the fact that he knows Mary Shelley, and about, like how, this reminds me of the time that I was with Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and blah, 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 blah. And like, he's just talking and talking.
Well, okay, maybe, all right, so maybe that line wasn't as forced as I originally thought. Maybe that was...
Well, I mean, it's not forced from the perspective of someone who knows all that.
Well, there you go. And I'm completely fine with that.
But it is kind of, it's obviously forced in the sense that there's obvious intent behind that, where Steven Moffat just decided, you know what, I'm going to take all those people who say that Big Finish, quote unquote, isn't canon, and I'm going to show them what for.
Yeah.
But no love for the novels or the comics.
Or the TV movie.
Yeah, he didn't mention Grace.
Right. That's kind of interesting. In a sense, I mean, it would be a little bit more difficult to say that didn't happen, considering that's when the Seventh Doctor regenerated into the Eighth. Unless you don't really consider Grace to be a companion, because she didn't really go with the Doctor anywhere.
She's sort of the predecessor of what we now call the one-off companion.
That's true.
There didn't used to be such a thing, and she was the first one.
Well, there you go. Just breaking new ground.
I liked his costume.
Yeah,
he looked like a very tall hobbit.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
even though he's not actually all that tall.
Well, he would be tall for a hobbit. Yeah, no, I liked it, and I liked that he appeared to have his own hair as opposed to a wig. Because didn't he wear a wig in the TV movie? Wasn't that a thing?
He did have a wig. He hates it and doesn't like to talk about it. So I don't. Were you aware of the semi-canonical, quote unquote, new costume that he had a while ago?
No.
I forget who it was who did this. It was like, I think it was the people who make the costumes for the Lord of the Rings movies, actually.
Huh.
They designed a costume for him that would have, short hair and sort of like it's a jacket that's sort of halfway between his TV movie jacket and Christopher Eccleston's jacket. So, and this is something that Big Finish has started using in their marketing for the newest Eighth Doctor adventures. Basically, with all the Doctors, all of their like covers for their releases are based on existing photos.
Oh yeah,
but there are like 5 photos of the Eighth Doctor from the TV movie.
Right.
Like promotional photos that they can use as reference for covers. So basically what they did was and he had always refused to get dressed up in the old costume and take new photos, but Big Finish convinced him like to use this new costume and take new photos. So then they took a whole bunch of new photos that they could use going forward. And now there's this third Paul McGann costume that looks like a hobbit.
Well, there you go. So, okay. So there was a costume that was designed by the Lord of the Rings people, and then there's another costume that just wasn't designed by the Lord of the Rings people, but it just happens to look like a hobbit.
Yeah, yeah. I think that costume was. Hold on, I need to Google this for reference.
Well, obviously you do.
Okay, so he had a new sonic screwdriver that was designed by Weta, who makes the props and stuff and effects.
I
actually don't know where the costume came from, but it was considered to be like semi-official, and I don't really understand what that means. But in any case, Big Finish eventually adopted it. So.
That's cool. Now, in this, he definitely had the classic series sonic screwdriver.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was cool. That alone was cool to see again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they can afford to do these kind of crazier sort of references to other that only fans would get in a mini-sode like this, as opposed to like an actual episode. And they definitely didn't shy away from that, like with all those just little things, and I don't know, I loved it.
Yeah. I feel like for something like this, a general audience might have sort of just been like, why is this a thing? Like if they had incorporated this 6 minutes into, say, the beginning of the name of the Doctor, it'd be like, well, what is this thing, and why are we supposed to care about this other weird version of the Doctor that no one's heard of?
Right.
So, but putting it in a minisode that's specifically directed at at us,
right?
It works really well. Even if Christopher Eccleston didn't actually show up, they could time in the Ronnie it.
Right, of course they could.
Well, they kind of do that here in because John Hurt isn't actually there. I mean,
right.
He looks into a mirror and sees an image of a very decades old image of John Hurt, and you hear a John Hurt voiceover, but I don't think John Hurt actually showed up for the filming of this.
Right. Yeah, it seems unlikely. I mean, it seems unlikely just from the way they filmed it, because I mean, if they had indeed, dragged John Hurt down there to spend 5 seconds filming him, I'm sure they would have filmed his actual face and not a reflection of his face. Yeah. So it stands to reason that no, they just kind of photoshopped that together.
And they could do the same for Eccleston. They could just Photoshop that together and then just put in a clip of him saying "fantastic."
Exactly, and that would be just seamless.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I could totally see that. It would be nice if Eccleston were to come back and just do that. But I mean, that seems way unlikely.
Well, Eccleston has. I mean, it has been universally claimed that they had discussions with Eccleston, and Eccleston said no.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, Paul McGann also claimed that he had never been contacted, and that nothing had been done. Paul McGann has been keeping this secret and lying to people since they filmed this back in, I think, May.
Yeah, that's true. Because didn't they have a thing where they had like a bunch of the Doctors, like the classic series Doctors, and like they were, I don't know, giving like interviews or something, and they all said that they had not been contacted for the 50th or whatever. So maybe they were all lying.
I think that was even longer ago.
That could be.
But even to this day, you still have Sylvester McCoy, Peter Davison, and Colin Baker saying publicly that they're not involved. And Colin Baker said, "I'm not involved. I've spoken to Peter Davison, he's not involved. I've spoken to Sylv, and he's not involved. And I've spoken to Paul, and he's not involved." And then Paul McGann turned out to be involved. And Colin Baker said, "I had no idea."
So maybe everyone's just lying to Colin. Maybe everyone was invited except Colin Baker, and they just feel really, really bad about it.
Well, if Colin Baker wanted to come back to the show, he should have come back for Time in the Ronnie.
That's right. He had a chance, and he passed it up.
There's a quote from Colin Baker that's going around where he's talking about how sad he is not to be asked back. He talks about how he feels like the old Doctors are being treated as surplus baggage.
Mm.
And the segment of Doctor Who fandom that hates Steven Moffat has pounced on Moffat and said that
you're making Colin feel bad. He's
horrible for making all of these Doctors feel bad, and he's only celebrating his own era of Doctor Who and no previous era of Doctor Who.
Right.
Which is kind of ridiculous because he did this thing with Paul McGann, and then Paul McGann he lands on Karn and meets the Sisterhood of Karn, which is from a Fourth Doctor story.
Oh, I was going to ask that because I didn't actually know what that was.
And it also appeared later in an Eighth Doctor Big Finish audio, which is canon. Which is now definitely canon.
Yeah. So there you go. So they would even go so far as to actually recognize the Eighth Doctor. Not that they need to, because they sort of just know it's him just by looking at the crashed spaceship.
Yeah, well, presumably, yeah.
Well, because isn't that like a thing? Like, right? I'm not misremembering this. Like when the spaceship crash lands, they like look out and they're like, he's come back.
Yeah, so they know it's the Doctor before they even see him. See what version it is. But
so yes, not a. I was wondering about that. I was wondering if that was a thing that was just made up for this little thingamawhatsit, or if this was actually a previous adventure.
No, they do appear in the Brain of Morbius, which I'm sure we will eventually watch.
Ah, yes.
And they don't have like magic potions that allow you to choose what your regeneration will look like.
Okay.
But they do have stuff relating to eternal stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you gotta have, yeah, you know, there's at least some stuff that's gonna be eternal. So as long as you have that, you're golden.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah. So do you think that that what happens in this minisode, the whole potion drinking whatnot, do you think that that's going to be a way that they explain away the 13 regeneration limit? Do you think that that's the fact that they're talking about eternal life and all that stuff?
That's interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that. It could be. I have a feeling that if that's what they were going to do, then they would probably be establishing this in the show instead of in a minisode.
That's true. That's true.
And I've always kind of like my expectation is that the way that this regeneration is going to continue is somehow going to involve a new version of the Doctor coming out of that big swirling thingy from The Name of the Doctor. You know, there's a certain line of speculation that is wild among the internet that Matt Smith is in fact the 13th and final incarnation of the Doctor.
Really?
Based on the notion that we have this John Hurt version who is now confirmed to be between 8 and 9.
Right.
But also David Tennant used up a regeneration in Journey's End.
Yeah.
Which is something that Steven Moffat has actually pointed out in interviews.
Yeah.
So I think he said something like, well, you have to look at John Hurt, you have to look at the fact that he allegedly used up a regeneration in Journey's End, or did he? And he said, this is all something that we're going to have to figure out eventually. And he didn't like come down saying, yes, it is definitely the case that Matt Smith is the 13th incarnation, but he sort of hinted that might be something that would be taken into account.
Yeah, the way you phrased that, I'm assuming that was more or less a direct quote.
Well,
sort of
paraphrase.
I'm just gonna. Well, I'm gonna assume that you have like perfect recall. It sounds like he hasn't given that much thought to, you know, the incarnations and.
No, he lies through his teeth all the time.
Well, I realize that, but I mean, just yeah, I don't know. Yes, so to the extent that he's probably lying, he's probably thought a lot about this.
Yeah, I'm sure he knows exactly what regeneration the Doctor is on as far as his storyline is concerned.
Right.
And if he plans on telling the story of how that regeneration limit is overcome, which I think he probably does, then I'm sure he's got a good handle on what's going on there, and he's not exactly making it up as he goes along, as much as it sometimes seems like he is.
Right, exactly. But yeah. So I would say, So I would say that it's gonna be interesting. I mean, like I would want to, or I would like to think that. Well, I don't know. I don't know what I would like to think. It would be interesting if Matt Smith were the 13th. I mean, the thing is that I don't know. I kind of like the idea that, you know, at the end of Peter Capaldi's regeneration, we might get something radically different because of the fact it's the final regeneration or whatever. And so I don't want to believe that something happens between. Well, I don't know. You know what? I actually don't know.
This minisode also contained further confirmation of the fact that, yes, the Doctor could be a woman.
Yeah, it did.
In fact, I know some people are upset with Steven Moffat for not casting a woman as the Doctor, but I think he has done more than any previous showrunner. No showrunner has cast a woman as the Doctor, but Steven Moffat has done more than any other showrunner to suggest that he could be a woman.
Right. Yeah, because it's definitely mentioned here. I'd like to almost compile a list of all the times where the Doctor has made references to the fact that he could be a woman if he, or any Time Lord could be a woman if they so chose.
I think it's really just, this, the Doctor's wife, and the Curse of Fatal Death spoof sketch.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Which is Steven Moffat.
Right. There you go. So yeah, he's hands down the most of any Doctor Who writer or showrunner. Well, I don't know. I would argue that you could even include Fires of Pompeii in there, because there's like a moment where the Doctor enters the temple or whatever of the Sisters of the Sibylline. Is that it? Yeah. And they comment on like, no man's allowed to enter this temple or whatever, and the Doctor replies like, no, it's just us girls.
I didn't interpret that way, but
well, I think
okay, sure.
I think you can leave that up to interpretation.
Oh, and also went right after the Doctor regenerates into Matt Smith, he thinks he's a woman briefly.
That's right. So that's right. And that part of that part of the episode was supposed to be written by Steven Moffat. So
it was. One interesting interpretation of the larger Doctor Who mythos that I have read in light of what we now know about the Eighth Doctor's regeneration comes from a blogger who goes by Tea Time Brutality.
Okay, has
theorized that the Doctor from Scream of the Shalka and the Rowan Atkinson Doctor from Curse of Fatal Death are options that are in chalices, because they are alternate Ninth Doctors, and they've always been referred to as like alternative regenerations of the Eighth Doctor, like that the next one after 8. So presumably there are other alternate realities where instead of choosing to be a warrior, the Doctor chooses to be Rowan Atkinson, or chooses to be an animated Richard E. Grant.
That's actually a really cool concept. I like that idea that those are like potential futures of the Doctor that just never happened, or happened in alternate timelines or something. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. There was actually a Doctor Who novel, an Eighth Doctor novel. I've never read the Eighth Doctor novels, but from what I understand, one of the very last Eighth Doctor novels tried to reconcile the Shalka Doctor, the Scream of the Shalka Doctor, the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor, and the Eccleston Doctor by saying that they were from alternate realities. Like at some point it is said, for some reason the Doctor has 3 different ninth incarnations in different timelines, which now makes additional sense if you take this minisode into account. I would have been kind of like, man, I don't like that idea, but now I like it because it makes there's a reason why that might be true.
Yeah, that's true. Because you'd think, if the process is indeed random, that, there'd be thousands of possible realities, or in fact, infinite realities. Actually, that's probably not true. There's probably a limited number of combinations of the Time Lord genome, but, we can say it's almost limitless. But yeah. So, that does make extra sense. Because, it's nice when you can sort of reconcile all these things that were never meant to be reconciled.
Yeah, well, if Big Finish is canon, why can't everything be? Come on.
That's right.
Why can't Peter Cushing be canon?
That's right. Why can't he be the Doctor that just happened to refer to the TARDIS as TARDIS?
Yeah. And was a human.
Right.
It's some chameleon arch thing. I don't think Rose is Rose as we know her.
No, it's because I've read rumors or theories, probably more towards the end of theories. She certainly kind of seems as though she is the Bad Wolf.
Yeah, she could very well be,
because she had like glowy eyes in one of the shots, I think.
Yeah,
those are not Rose eyes.
Yeah, at any rate, I don't think this is set during series 2 from from Rose and the Doctor's perspective.
No.
We know that Elizabeth I is going to be in the special. Mm-hmm. And so we know that the Doctor's whole fling with Elizabeth I takes place after he stopped traveling with Donna.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or at least it seems to be the case from watching the 10th Doctor era. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think this is a post Donna, probably post Waters of Mars even. 10th Doctor.
Well, right, because isn't there one point where 10 specifically asks 11 or says something like, "What's going to happen? Like, tell me," or something. I don't remember what it was, but I feel like that kind of happened, and I feel like that's more of the sort of depressed, existential 10, like, my fate is to die, blah, 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 my song is going to end, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's kind of more towards that end of the what have you. Also, I have no idea if this is I don't know if this is related at all, but David Tennant's hair is kind of down in the in the trailers that we've seen.
Poor yeah, I've noticed that. That's
so even his hair's kind of depressed.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, it's not as extreme a physical difference as some of the multi-Doctor stories we've seen.
Well, that's true.
Have had.
That's true.
Like, I mean, in the 2 Doctors where Patrick Troughton's hair is completely gray, or like in Time Crash where the 5th Doctor's like a lot older.
Well, right. But they explained that by saying it was something about shorting out the time differential. I mean, it was complete.
Sure.
I mean,
that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I'm not saying that it was. I mean, it was like 5 minutes they had to say something, or they didn't. But well, yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny because it's almost fitting that it not be when 10 and Rose were together, because that seems to be, at least in the case of. In the case of the 5 Doctors, that's sort of more to have them just sort of all plucked out of history separately or whatever. That's kind of more how that happened in the 5 Doctors, where the companions and the Doctors were all taken out of time sort of separately, mm-hmm. and kind of thrown together. So that's I don't know. So that I almost want to believe that's kind of how this is going to work.
It looks good though.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. Based on what we've seen, it looks like just looks good.
It does look good. Well, and obviously this is going to be about the Time War. I don't feel like that was confirmed until, well, I don't know if it was ever actually confirmed like in writing or whatever. But I mean, I know that specifically in the minisode they talk about the Time War, so it kind of goes without saying that that's definitely going to be what this covers. Yeah,
that's more or less definitely true at this point, I think. Whether the thing that it covers is the destruction of Gallifrey and the Daleks, I assume it is, mm-hmm. because there's a line in the trailer where whatever Billy Piper's character is named says "the moment is coming" or something like that, which is the name of the device that the Doctor uses to do the bad thing he does. The double genocide.
Right.
I'm a little kind of, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the notion that the John Hurt Doctor is the Doctor's shameful secret. Mm-hmm. That was sort of the notion that drove the name of the Doctor. Uh-huh. If the shameful secret turns out to be just like he did this thing we already knew he did. Only he did it in a different body than you thought he was in. If that turns out to be the whole deal, I might be a little bit underwhelmed by that.
Right. Well, and the thing is that it's kind of weird because the Doctor, I'm not sure exactly when this happened. I think this might have happened. Well, I think it was kind of sporadic, but the Doctor has in the past talked about the things he did during the Time War.
He's bragged about it.
Well, right, exactly.
On occasion.
Yeah, so he's talked about the battles he fought in. He talked about, like, I think this might have been something he said, like, to Davros. He was talking about, like, I saw your ship go down in this place or whatever. I don't remember what it was. But, so, yeah, it's a little bit strange for it to be suddenly, like, this big deal that, like, he was ashamed of it when he has bragged about it in the past. Yeah, and even as recently as, and probably more recently, but in The Doctor's Wife, he's like, fear me, I killed them all. That doesn't seem like that's too shameful for him, unless he's trying to sort of make it seem less painful to him by kind of pretending like it's not a big deal or anything. But it actually really like deeply hurts him to just even mention it. But he's kind of going along with the whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, Moffat's really going to kind of have to sell me on that concept.
Well, what would be interesting is if all that we've seen trailer wise and with like clips and stuff, if all of that happens within like the first 15 minutes of the episode, and then the rest of the episode is about something else entirely.
That could happen.
Well, yeah, and it wouldn't be too out of the realm of possibilities with what Steven Moffat seems to like to do with his big sort of finales and specials. He seems to like to thwart expectations and sort of subvert things. So, it could very well be all this stuff that they're talking about, like this building up to like, oh yeah, the moment, it's the moment is ready or whatever. All that stuff could be
the pre-credit sequence.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then after that, there's some new problem that, the John Hurt Doctor creates or does something that's bad. I don't know.
Yeah, well, one of the things Moffat has kept saying in interviews and stuff like that is, people have asked him, why is David Tennant in this special, but, this person and that person and this person aren't in this special. And what he keeps saying is, the only things that you know about that are in this special are the things that we had no choice but to film outside. Because there's no way for us to cover up the fact that there's a Zygon in this special, because that scene, for whatever reason, had to be filmed outside.
Well, right.
There's no way to cover up that David Tennant was in it. But anything we filmed inside, you have no idea what we filmed inside. And there's a couple things in the trailer that were clearly filmed inside.
Right.
But aside from the minute or so of footage that we've seen that's filmed indoors, anything could happen inside. Inside is the most exciting place of all.
Right. Yeah. So I would say yeah. It could really diverge wildly, and to some extent, I don't know how all of the pieces that were filmed outside that I'm aware of fit together.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So yeah, it's perfectly reasonable, especially because I don't know. It's just it's weird because the trailer was definitely very Time War heavy, and it seemed like everything in the trailer almost was probably directly related with the Time War. But there, those exterior scenes that exist. I don't know what those are. What those could possibly be for.
Yeah, have you seen any of the quote unquote clips as opposed to the trailers?
I saw one where they were in a museum.
Yeah, so I have no idea what the museum has to do with anything.
Right. Yeah. So was that just supposed to be like a little throwaway adventure where the Doctor gets to meet? Well, where 11 gets to meet 10, or is that part of a larger story? It's just exciting that we don't have much longer to wait to find all this stuff out.